Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
A very quick announcement.
This is
Hey everybody, just as a live update, they are still on the second vote, so in reality, we're looking at it closer to a 3:40 start time.
Oh.
Hi everyone, the last vote just got called, so that is a 10-minute vote, and then we're gonna be shepherding people over here from there.
so like might be able to.
Senator should have a seat when he comes in, or just stand on the side?
He'll probably stand up with everyone here. I'm assuming.
Should we start? Everybody get in?
Hang on one second.
Yep.
What are you gonna take out of there?
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Cory, come on up. John's up here. Today is not a celebration. It's a deep sigh of relief. We have lost so many of our heroes, and sadly, more will continue to get sick, and more will die. And today is not about the politicians who are here to serve the public. We work for the people here standing with us and those who couldn't be here today. It's all about them, their families, their selfless service, and that they answered the call of duty when our nation asked. It's about the people standing behind me who have been here for weeks and months and years, over and over and over again, coming back here where they never should have had to do that. So before I introduce our speakers, I just want to thank so many of the people who worked so hard to make this bill permanent. Jon Stewart and John Feel, International Association of Firefighters, and especially the New York City Uniformed Firefighters and Fire Officers. Police Benevolent Association, Sergeants Benevolent Association, Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association, National Association of Police Organization, Port Authority PBA, New York State AFL-CIO, DC 37, American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, New York City Building Trades, United Federation of Teachers, Operating Engineers, Laborers, Citizens for Extension of the James DeDroga Act, Plumbers. And by name, Ben Shavat, Susie Ballantyne, Chris Granberg, Andy Edmiston, Shannon Meisner, Peg Seminario, Dr. James Melius, in memory, and the entire Feel Good Foundation team, Rich Palmer, Matt McCauley, Mike O'Connell, Kenny Specht, Keith Delmar, Kenny Ehlers, Anne-Marie Principe, Yvonne Sanchez, Joe McKay, Mike Clancy, Dave Turner, Troy Hutchinson, Brendan Fitzpatrick, Ray Zakowski, Rafael Orozco, Phil Alvarez, David Alvarez, Fernando Alvarez, Tom Wilson, Brian McGuire, Mark Mack, Tyson Jones, Phil Rizzo, Karen Pfeiffer, Ada Lugo, Al Williams, Rich Rael, Donnell Holbrook, Kevin Swagbaum, Elias Huzmamuddin, Robert Barash, Michael Barish, Bridget Gromley, Lila Nordstrom, Lee London, Sean Reardon, Frank Ciaccio, Rob Sarah, Brian Donnelly, Jerry Severs, and Margaret Alvarez. I'd now like to introduce Senator Chuck Schumer. And I can tell you, you've never had a fighter like Senator Schumer on your side, someone who's never given up, who's never given in, who's made sure he stood by for every single time this bill passed. Senator Schumer.
Thank you, Senator Gillibrand, and let me thank you for the amazing job you have done. She worked the floor endlessly, getting names that we never thought, like Cotton and Cruz, who could be on this bill. And the proof of the pudding of the great job she did and all the people behind me did is said in two numbers, 97 and 2. 97 and 2. Righteousness sometimes in this mangled town sometimes prevails, and thank God today it did. I want to thank all the people who Kirsten thanked, most of all the folks behind us. Now they can do what they want to do. They never wanted to come here. They would have rather been with their families, with their brothers and sisters who they knew were ill, with their friends, ministering, caring, as our first responders are trained to do and have always done, not just on 9/11, but on every day. And now they can go back and do what they really wanted to do. They didn't want to be here. They didn't like being here, but they had a sense of duty. And nevertheless, they persisted, and we've achieved this goal. I'd like to say particularly, we have great 21st century heroes whose names are Zadroga and Pfeiffer and Alvarez. And I'd say to the Zadroga and Pfeiffer and Alvarez families, many of whom are here, your losses, painful as they are not in vain, as today shows. The men you lost and all the others did what the Bible says we should all do, not curse the darkness, but light a candle. And today that candle burns very, very brightly. So to all of our friends who made this happen, for all of us who now breathe one gigantic sigh of relief, particularly the men and women behind me, thank you. This is tough times for America. Sometimes we doubt its goodness, and it's awfully hard to have that good shine through. But today it did. Thank God it did. Let it be a beacon to everyone else. I put on this flag 9/12/01. I wear it every day. It represented close to 3,000 people who were lost, and unfortunately, every day this flag represents more people. But we'll never take it off as long as there are brave people who stood up for us. And this flag and all flags will remind us that we have to stand up for them. Who's next?
Our next speaker is Senator Cory Gardner, who had the courage and bravery to lead the fight on behalf of the Republicans in our chamber. Cory Gardner.
Thanks. Thank you, Senator Gillibrand, for your incredible leadership on this. On September 11th, the days following, we all remember what our country was going through. The flags that were waving and draped across bridges, people standing on street corners rallying to their nation's cause. The men and women standing in this group today didn't hesitate to take that call. I can't put into words the people that I have met with here or at home who did so much for this country, not knowing that it could cost them their life or a loved one's life, not knowing that they would ever doubt Congress and the resolve of this place to do what is right. But out of the ashes and debris of September 11th arose hope and courage and strength and commitment. And those acts resulted in a vote today of 97-2. I won't forget. we won't forget. And today you know, all of you, that this country stands with you and for you. Thank you for your work, your resolve, your sacrifice, your commitment and courage. Because when this country is called upon again, we can all say, please stand up. Because we have proven that we will stand up for you. Thanks for what you've done.
Thank you. Our next two speakers are John Fiel, 9/11 first responder and 9/11 health advocate, and Jon Stewart.
Like together?
Go get him, Tony.
Like, yeah. You know, Mitch McConnell said politics is a contact sport. These people laid the lumber. They tackled the Congress and then the Senate, and I can't be more proud of them. You know, when I was here a couple weeks ago, we passed a bill in the House. I said this was no longer about legislation. We knew we were going to get the bill passed. This is about the bond and the friendship of those on the Hill, those in the media, and those who I walk the halls of Congress with. Passing this legislation, there's no joy. There's no comfort. Yes, I cried with John, but that was to exhale. That was to get 18 years of pain and suffering out, and I believe it's out. But I'm going to ask my team now to put down your swords and pick up your rakes and go home. And hopefully we don't have to come back. What I'm going to miss the most about D.C. is nothing. And no offense to Chuck and Kirsten and Carolyn and Peter, who are, and I'm not being biased, they're better people than they are elected officials, and they're pretty good elected officials. And I mean that sincerely. And, you know, to Mitch McConnell, he kept his word to me. He kept his word to those men that were in the meeting with me. And while I don't always agree with his politics, he was honest, he was sincere, and everything he said, he did. So I thank Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. As for Rand Paul and Mike Lee, told you so. We whipped your asses. 97-2. 97. When does the Senate ever get that? I mean, I'm just so proud of these guys behind women behind me. What they've accomplished and what they've sacrificed, that they drove down 95 countless times, stopping in restrooms, taking medications, having their wives and yelling at me, make sure my husband takes his medication, watching them throw up, watching them shake, watching them cry. The toll on these guys, physically and mentally, I don't know how much longer they would have made it, but I know we would not have made it to December where we would have got attached to a larger vehicle. In 2010, we got unanimous consent. In 2015, we got attached to a larger vehicle. We saw an opportunity. We had a small window, and we took advantage of it. And we're leaving D.C. on our terms, and we're going out with dignity and class. We got our straight up and down vote, 97-2. That is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And I'll leave you with this. In the beginning of change, the patriot is a scarce man, brave, hated, and scorned. When his cause succeeds, the timid join him, for then it costs nothing to be a patriot. Mark Twain.
Well said. Our next speaker is Jon Stewart. And I have to say, this is a man who didn't have to do what he did. He spent all the capital he had gained over a lifetime of success, and he spent it helping the people here.
Yes, I think we can all agree I'm the real hero. Hard not to see it that way. This has been the honor of my life to work with the men and women behind me. Today it's about the heart of James Adroga and Joe. in the integrity of Ray Pfeiffer, in the courage of Lou Alvarez, and the tenacity of John Fiel. They lifted this 9/11 community on their shoulders, and they carried them home. And I will always be so proud to have been associated with it. And we can never repay all that the 9/11 community has done for our country, but we can stop penalizing them. And today is that day that they can exhale, because unfortunately the pain and suffering of what these heroes continue to go through is going to continue. There have been too many funerals, too many hospices. These families deserve better, and I'm hopeful that today begins the process of being able to heal without the burden of having to advocate. And I will follow you, whatever your next adventure shall be.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney, who has worked this bill for almost 20 years, and she has worked from the very beginning as the first person to introduce it, and someone who never gave up.
Thank you, Kristen. First of all, I want to recognize and thank the first responders and the survivors and their families for their selfless and tireless work on this bill. And thank you to my colleagues in the House, Speaker Pelosi, Leader Hoyer, and my very good friend, Congressman Nadler and King, for their leadership. Nadler cannot be with us. He gives his warmest regards. And they led us to 402 to 12 in the House. I think it's the most strongest bipartisan vote. Building on that is this vote today in the Senate. I thank our advocates, Jon Stewart, and really the real Twin Towers of New York, the inspiration to me throughout this bill, their work on that day, the police and fire, New York Fire Department, New York Police Department, for what they do for us every day. And today, the extraordinary leadership of Senators Gillibrand, Schumer, and Gardner were evidenced with this very strong vote, where we passed the Never Forget the Heroes, James Zadroga, Ray Pfeiffer, and Luis Alvarez permanent authorization of the September 11th Victims Compensation Fund Act. That's the title of the bill, and it would not have happened without all the people standing here today, labor, advocates, families, everyone. It has been an honor to stand beside you in this fight. I just wish it hadn't taken so long and that we hadn't lost so many friends along the way, including the 18 we've lost in the past 2 weeks since Luis Alvarez died. This moment is for James Zadroga, Ray Pfeiffer, Luis Alvarez, and what they stand for, and all of the others who have gotten sick or passed away because of their time spent at Ground Zero, the Pentagon, and the Shanksville crash site. The vote today is a win for our country and the heroes and survivors who were there for us. The 9/11 community now knows that they and their families have the measure of security that comes with the permanent funding of the Victims Compensation Fund permanently for their lives. We have a moral obligation to take care of the people who took care of us and those who take care of them. First and foremost for what they did on 9/11 in the days and weeks and months that passed afterwards, but secondly because of the toxic lie that our government told them, that it was safe to work on the pile when it was not. We want to underscore and be clear that 9/11 was an attack on our nation, not just on New York, and the people who need and deserve this program live in all 50 states and in 433 out of the 435 congressional districts. If you remember 9/11, you remember that we as a nation vowed to never forget. Today, the Senate kept that promise. Today, we did the right thing for the right reason, for the right people. Today is a day of which all Americans can be proud. God bless our heroes and our nation. And thank you. Thank you.
Our next speaker.
I can take the coat off.
Yeah.
And it's getting hot, and I get to take the coat off. I vowed I would wear the coat till we pass the bill.
Well done. Well done. Our next speaker is Joe Zadroga, the father of NYPD Detective James Zadroga, who was the first to die because of a 9/11 illness.
Today is a great day, let me tell you. It started for the Zadroga family in December 2001. He came home sick, went to the hospital. We went to Columbian Presbyterian, the best pulmonologist in the state. And you know what he told us? I'm not going to treat you. And that went on for 5 years, trying to get him help, trying to get him treatment. Went to hospital, thrown out of hospital after hospital. Spoke to news, TV stations. Nobody wanted the story. Nobody wanted to talk about it. It took his death for it to come to light that people were sick. And only then did the TV channels come down, news channels come down and took up the story. If it wasn't for that medical examiner in New Jersey who had the guts to come out and say he died from 9/11, who knows how much longer it would have been before the governor came to admit that people were dying from 9/11 illnesses. I'm going to thank a lot of people here. I know I'm going to forget a lot of people, but we have to mention the people that were there from the start. I was asked to speak in front of a congressional hearing, and Senator Hillary Clinton was there. She took up the fight. She was the first one to take up the fight for the responders. She got bills passed for the police and the fire, and then later on for all responders. Congresswoman Maloney was right there with her. I will never forget her. I will never forget Hillary. And Senator Gillibrand picked up the fight when Hillary moved on to other things. First time on TV, Neil Caputo. 20 seconds on TV, speaking about 9/11, about people dying. I said to Neil, 20 seconds, this is after don't worry, kid, this is going to go past. Didn't know what TV recognition did, but we moved on. I'd like to thank the NYPD. They were great taking care of Tyler Ann after her father died. One thing they do, they take care of their orphans. We had her for 17 years. She's 17 years old now. I'm so proud of her. And I'm proud that we're here today and we got this bill passed. I'm proud that Jimmy's name is on there. I'm proud that he's got 2 other heroes on there with him. God knows that they belong there, and God bless them. God bless their families. God bless all the families of 9/11. And finally, I just want to thank, he's not here today, and many of you know him, TJ. He was my sidekick. He was the one that kicked me in the ass when I was down and told me we got to go out there and get things done. He was the one that remembered how to get around this place. I would have been lost half the time. So, I like to thank him. And, of course, my wife, she was there for me all along. I was there for her. If it wasn't for her, I don't know if I could have survived all these years. But, again, if it wasn't for God, I don't know if I would survive. But, again, I like it on the higher note. Thank God it's done. It's passed, and hopefully, God, we never have to come back here again for this reason. All I want to come back for is to take Tyler in on a guided tour. Thank you.
Well done, Joe.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Karen Pfeiffer. She's the wife of New York City firefighter Ray Pfeiffer, who was lost earlier this year.
Good afternoon. Unfortunately, my speech, I was told, was supposed to be before the vote. So I'll play around. But anyway, my name is Karen Pfeiffer. My husband was FDNY firefighter Ray Pfeiffer. Ray responded to the New York City World Trade Center 9/11 attacks that day. He lost many of his dear friends and his fellow firefighters. Ray continued to respond to Ground Zero over the many weeks and months on a recovery mission to bring back the remains of his fallen brothers. All the while, Ray was a voice for all first responders who were suffering from illnesses they contracted as a result of their rescue and recovery efforts at Ground Zero. I am here to be Ray's voice. Ray was part of this team, the Feel Good Foundation team. They were working to get the passage of health care bills over the years, getting the support they needed. Ray's passion was to help all his brothers and sisters dying from 9/11 illnesses. And Ray came down here many times with the team in his wheelchair up and down the halls and doing the best he could. Unfortunately, Ray was diagnosed in 2009 with stage 4 cancer, which started with a pain in his hip. Ray was a husband, a father, and a firefighter, which he lived for. Ray will never see his children married or meet his grandchildren. Ray passed away May 28th, 2017. We watched Ray suffer in pain for 7 years with 11 surgeries. These team members have traveled down here numerous times, walking the halls and advocating for our heroes. They all deserve our thanks. Their hard work for the responders had paid off. And I just want to thank the Senate and the Congress for Ray's name. I was so honored to have Ray's name on the legislation. I mean, it was so proud. And I know Ray is looking down today and just saying, God bless you all, and it's finally done. We could all be at peace now. We don't have to worry. Our families will be okay. And let these heroes rest in peace. And I mean, I'm exhausted. I don't know how you guys.
God bless you.
I am really tired. Thank you so much.
I loved your husband. I loved him.
Thank you so much for all this. It's so wonderful. You guys are amazing. Oh, there's my buddy. You guys are amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, my God. I'm so glad I came today, but I'm tired.
I can imagine. Our next speaker is Our next speaker is Congressman Peter King, and I just want to thank Peter for leading the charge from the Republican side from the beginning of this advocacy. Thank you for your leadership and strength.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kirsten. And let me just at the outset thank Kirsten Gillibrand, Senator Schumer, Chuck Schumer, Senator Cory Gardner, who was a great voice in the Senate on the Republican side. I want to thank him for all his bipartisan efforts. In the House, of course, Jerry Nadel and Carol Maloney. I want to, again, they've been there from the start. I want to commend them for it. NYPD, Port Authority Police, FDNY, construction unions, labor unions, so many of the advocates, citizens from the neighborhood. This was a tremendous victory today, but it's bittersweet, because we know in celebrating, if you want to call it that, a victory, we also remember those who died, those who are sick today, those who become sick in the future. So this is, again, it's a great achievement. It shows that Congress can get things done, but really it's a lasting testament and memorial to the men and women behind us, those who put their lives on the line, those who risked their lives, and again, the incredible coverage that was shown, talking about Mrs. Droga, you're talking about the Alvarez family, you're talking about the Pfeiffer family, to see Lou Alvarez here just a few months ago, and he actually reasonably healthy back in February, then to see him the way he was just several months after that. Ray Pfeiffer, kept seeing him over the years and years at so many events in Long Island, New York, and down here in Congress. Again, these guys have incredible guts and stamina, and their families stood with them, so we have to commend all of them. And again, it was really an honor for me to be part of this, to work with these brave men and women who, because of them, we will never, ever forget the memory of 9/11, the heroism of 9/11. And today's vote is just a tremendous vote, again, to me, a tremendous tribute to the men and women, the Senate who got it done, men and women in the House who got it done. And again, I can't leave out Jon Stewart. What he did that day, this probably would have passed sometime along the line. But after that day, Jon scared the hell out of everybody when he went. Nobody had the nerve to say no. And again, you see him, he's really a nice guy, soft-spoken guy, easygoing guy. You get him on a cause, get out of his way. And also, John Field, again, great work, all of you. But let's never forget the people who are still suffering and will suffer in the future. Thank you very much.
There's like 10 correction sites in New York City Corrections. Can you mention them?
Yes. I also want to thank the New York City correction officers who are here and the people who are working corrections for their tireless advocacy and stalwart support for this cause. Thank you for all you've done to walk the halls with us. Our next speaker is David Alvarez, the son of NYPD Detective Luis Alvarez.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Did not know I was going to be speaking, but
You don't have to.
I just want to say, when my father testified not too long ago, he said that he was coming down here to make sure that you never forget. And I want to thank you for not forgetting him, not forgetting all the other first responders who tirelessly worked to see this pass. So, thank you.
Our next speaker is Harold Shite, Berger, President, International Association of Firefighters.
Thank you, Senator. And I just want to take the opportunity on behalf of 316,000 members. That's all right. That'll give them a break. It's a little warm in here, right? You just got to keep going. That's right. That's right, Patty. But on behalf of our entire membership, 316,000 of the very best, our leadership in New York, UFA President Gerard Fitzgerald and his team, our UFOUA President Jake LaMonda and his team, our international union and part of our leadership, Ed Kelly, our General Secretary Treasurer, and to everybody here, Leader Schumer and Senator Gillibrand, Congresswoman Maloney and Congressman King, and so many to list to say thank you. This has been an extraordinary journey, and I've watched extraordinary work. And I've watched John Field and the Feel Good Foundation and admire their work. And I watched Jon Stewart actually bring a bright light on this issue to make sure a nation knew what needed to be done and what was a difficult journey. And the fact is, I'm so thankful to so many, just on behalf of our members, not those that have been lost, that will always be the legacy for all of us, but for those that are going to now have the comfort and the confidence to know they'll have the care and the health benefits and the compensation to be able to have some peace and not have to worry maybe day by day or year by year whether or not they're going to be cut off from the support that they have earned. Almost 18 years ago, this nation was attacked. And starting on that day and all the days and weeks and months that followed, we're proud of our own. But it was workers across all the sectors that served. It was in the recovery and rescue and then cleanup stages that everyone from the trades and the electricians, everyone who was at ground zero and sacrificed their own health to serve a nation. And the last thing I'm thankful for, having been at this for a long, long time, Mr. Leader, as you know, is that I'm thankful that we won't have to come back to this podium on this issue again, that our Congress and our Senate, its leadership, has shown America that the process can work and that you can advance important issues and legislation. And now this measure is put to bed in law that'll take care of those, quite frankly, forevermore. Thank you so much for everything everybody did.
Our next speaker is Pat Lynch, the president of the Police Benevolent Association of the City of New York.
There's so many to say thank you to. Our senators, our Congress folks. There's so many folks that fought for us. There's so many folks behind us that were at ground zero, all aspects. When it was the towers, when it was the pile, when it was the pit, all of it toxic. I thank them for allowing guys like us, folks like us, Americans, to try to live free because they rushed on in. Yes. But more importantly, we want to thank our families. We choose it. Our families don't, but they stand with us anyway. Sometimes they're standing on a stoop waiting for us to come home. For those families who watched us suffering and lost their loved ones, I thank you. For those that are home now, that are sick, this doesn't fix everything. It just eases the pain. I thank those that are struggling to breathe on their couch. I thank their family members who are doing everything they can to try to help them. You know, 97-2. A lot of folks focus on the 97. I'm sorry. I focus on the 2. I can't help it. It's what we do. You know, I heard a speech upstairs that said, you know, why are we rushing? 18 years, that's some rush. But you know what the reality is? The reality is some of us are in a rush. Some of us in a rush because they need this. Imagine the police officers and the firefighters and correction officers and those that have died since then, died working folks that we go to work to provide for our family that died thinking their family won't be provided for. You know, so, yeah, some of us in a rush. Some of us in a rush to leave here today, to go back to the city, to go back to Staten Island, to go to the wake to Detective Chris Cranston, whose family were correction officers, whose family were police officers, whose family, all of them, on the pile. Well, we're going to a funeral home. So, you know, whenever I do a day like today, I'm happy, but I'm sad. I'm happy it's done, but I'm sad because we have to deliver news. I'm happy because finally the fight's over, but then I'm sad because I realize it's really not. So we're going to go here. We're going to bow our heads. We're going to go to that wake, and we're going to try to give that family some solace. But remember, those two, remember, Chris Cranston stopped breathing, worrying that he couldn't provide for his family.
See the woman at the end, right there, she's crying. She's FBI agent on cancer. FBI, Pentagon people too.
Okay. I want to also recognize those who served at the Pentagon, members of our FBI, members of our other first responders. Many of them are here today, and I just want to thank you all for your service. I'm now going to introduce Paul Nunes Yato, the president of the Port Authority Police Benevolent Association.
Good afternoon. Thankfully for me, I was only asked to speak this morning while I was on the train down. The emotions for every first responder behind me are right back to 9/11. I didn't want to fumble my words, so I wrote them down. Good afternoon. The bill not only represents the sacrifices of 37 Port Authority police officers, 23 New York City police officers, and 343 New York City firefighters, but the countless first responders that came running to Ground Zero to assist with the rescue and recovery efforts. As all of you are aware, first responders came from all departments across our country. This is also about patriotism by our ironworkers, operating engineers, the building trades, doctors, nurses, and countless others that ran to help us. This is about ordinary citizens that went to work and were the victims of the worst attack on American soil since Pearl Harbor. This is about every citizen who was affected by the attacks, every family member that lost and continue to lose loved ones. Myself and my fellow responders came running when you needed us, and now 18 years later, you are honoring your commitment to never forget. For our brothers and sisters that are sick and dying, We will never forget your commitment and sacrifice, or your families. I would like to thank Senator Gillibrand, Senator Schumer, Congressman King, along with all the members of the Senate and Congress who honored their commitment to never forget us. And to Jon Stewart, I love you, brother. Thank you, sir.
Our next speaker is Jake LaMonda, President, Uniform Fire Association, Fire Officers Association, Local 854, IAFF, AFL-CIO, and Gerald Fitzgerald, President, Uniform Firefighters and Association, Local 94, IAFF, AFL-CIO.
Good afternoon. On behalf of New York City fire officers, both active and retired, I'm here to say thanks. I'll keep my comments brief, but I would have to say thank you to the New York delegation, both in the House and in the Senate, because they stood there with us from day one, right through this fight. It's been a long journey, a long fight. It was a fight with many faces, but in the end, we came together as a voice of one. And out of that dust, out of those ashes, rose the words, never forget, never forget. And I'm here to tell you that from coast to coast, America did not forget. And what we witnessed in the House and today in the Senate, our elected officials, they stood by those words, and they finally never forgot us. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mario Salento, our President of the New York State. Oh, Gerald. Jared, sorry. I thought he spoke for you. Sorry.
Senator Schumer's making fun of my Brooklyn accent already. That's all right, all right. That's all right. I'll try to keep the do's and the da's away. I'm Gerard Fitzgerald, President of the UFA. I'm going to keep my comments brief also. I want to thank the New York delegation. This would never have gotten done. They've been fighting for this for a long time. I think, Kirsten, as long as you've been on, you're the newbie. But we're very proud of the New York delegation and how they got bipartisan politics. But the vote today, I'm not going to call it bipartisan politics. I'm going to call it that it was bipartisan humanity. And 12 people from the House and 2 from the Senate proved that they don't have enough humanity to have voted this into legislation. So I'm proud that it's got done. I guess I'm happy. The only problem is that somebody has to get sick or die to collect this money. So there's not a lot of celebrating on this. It's important that every time that somebody is in that position, they always say, all I'm worried about is my family. Will they be taken care of? I know the police, the fire department, we take care of our own. I'm sure everybody is in that, but those are the 2 that I'm familiar with. I think that will continue, but having this money there will help as they are getting ready to meet their maker, and it's important. So thank you very much. Thank you to all the politicians across the country that did the right thing. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mario Salento, our President of the New York State AFL-CIO. Let me go this way.
You go first. Okay. Never want to get in front of a senator. Thank you. Thank you, Senator. And again, I want to thank all of the elected officials who are here today. Thank you for your dedication and your commitment and really your perseverance for all these years. Let me just say this. On behalf of the 2.5 million members of the New York State AFL-CIO, I want to thank everyone here. I want to take a moment to thank the labor leaders who are here, Jake LaMonda and Gerard Fitzgerald and Pat Lynch and of course Harold Shite, Berger. And I want to thank them because you set a standard for all labor leaders throughout this country. The passion you have and you've had for the past 18 years to fight for what you fight make us all better throughout the labor movement. And I thank you all for that. As for Mr. Jon Stewart, John, I don't know you. We don't know each other. But I do know this. You learn a lot about someone when they fight for other people when they don't have to. It shows everything about their character and their integrity. And thank you, John. And John Field goes without saying thank you. Let me just say this. You know, I'm proud, having worked at the state AFL-CIO for over 27 years, to say this, that 18 years ago, the labor movement made a promise. throughout the state, public sector unions and private sector unions and building trades unions from Buffalo to Brooklyn to Long Island and everywhere in between, that we would stand side by side and shoulder to shoulder with our brothers and sisters who led this fight, to be there to support them, to be there for whatever it was that they needed. And today we kept our promise to all of them. And we keep in mind one last thing is that, in the labor movement, we consider ourselves a family. We call each other brothers and sisters for a reason. But we also know intuitively that we don't have to be blood related to be a family. And we don't have to look alike or talk alike or sound alike to be a family. A family is a group of people who join together for a lot of different reasons, who care about one another, who help one another, who support one another, and who pick each other up when one of us falls down. And if you pick on one of us, you have to deal with all of us. That's a family. And today we showed what a true family is. We showed a family of the labor movement, but we also showed that we can be a family of citizens, as Americans, and as human beings. And I think that's why today is a successful day and why we're all thankful to be here. Thank you very much.
Our last speaker is Lila Nordstrom, a student at Stuyvesant High School during 9/11.
Hi. My name is Lila. I was a student at Stuyvesant High School on 9/11. Stuyvesant is 3 blocks from the World Trade Center, and we were there for about 8 months of the cleanup. And I'm a little bit at loss for words because I've never actually gotten to speak at one of these things without having to threaten to see everyone back here in 5 years. This has been sort of the work of my entire adult life at this point. I'm 35. I made my first trip down here at 22. And every 5 years, I've been coming back and telling the same story and trying to convince the same people that the same issues still matter. And so it's with huge relief that I don't have to make that threat this time. A huge amount of thanks is obviously owed to our wonderful New York delegation, to Carolyn Maloney and Peter King for ushering this through, to Jerry Nadler for always making sure that the survivor community was included in this legislation, for always making sure that we were a part of the discussion, and then, of course, to our great New York State senators for ushering this through the Senate. And also to my classmates and the many responders who live outside of New York, who made calls to their local representatives and let them know that this was a constituent issue for them as well. I've been living in California for 12 of the 13 years I've been doing this. A lot of my classmates live outside of the city, outside of New York State. And for all of us, it was really important that we see this kind of unity in the vote because this really is a constituent issue for every single senator. A lot of us who do this work don't just do the work of educating you guys about our exposures. We also do the considerably less glamorous work of reaching out to our community, making sure that they are taken care of, making sure that they are aware these services are available to them and able to take advantage of them. And having the danger of these programs expiring every 5 years made that work much more difficult. So it's with huge relief that we will be able to go back home and engage in that less glamorous but much more important work without our communities worrying that they were going to be forgotten in a few years, without people worrying that if they don't get sick by next year, they have no one will have their back. And as part of that work, I have one final message, which is, I know survivors don't see ourselves reflected in coverage of this issue very often. So I just want to reiterate that this program is for us too. It is for you if you are a survivor. If you are someone who, like me, got sent into Lower Manhattan as a child and spent 8 months in a toxic environment, if you are somebody who had, who was encouraged by a government lie that, to go back into your home and was not given proper guidance about how to clean that up, if you returned to work and had smoke blowing into your window for 4 months and heard again and again that there was nothing to be afraid of and only now we're finding out that there was something to be afraid of, then you have done your part to earn access to these programs. If I could cut out of my life the amount of time that I spend convincing sick survivors that they are worthy of these programs, that it is okay to apply to them, that they should not feel guilty about taking advantage of these programs, I could probably write a novel or learn a new language or something. But so as a final note, I just want to make sure that survivors all over the nation realize that these programs are for us 2, and I'm thrilled that from now on we'll be able to look forward instead of looking backwards and trying to continually revisit this part of the issue. There are ways in which the survivor community will, there are big implications for us in the larger healthcare debate. There are research implications for us, and we want to make sure that we can talk about those issues instead of just constantly revisiting this one. Thank you so much.
I just want to thank everyone who's here today for coming, for being part of this effort. And I just want to say thank you one last time to the men and women standing with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
It's okay. They're going to talk.